Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Kirill Tulay, investment analyst with a decade of experience. Here we connect the dots between macro, crypto, and AI. No noise, just what actually matters for your portfolio. 3 stories today, as always. First, the US economy is running hot. Despite oil at $100 and the Strait of Hormuz still shut. Let's take a closer look at what's going on with US companies. Second, the United Arab Emirates has just announced it is leaving OPEC, effective May 1st. Just days after it asked the US for a dollar swap line. We'll try to connect the 2 things together. And third, there might be another AI bottleneck developing. The data centers are about to get redesigned. Let's dive in. Quick disclaimer, nothing on this channel is financial advice. I'm sharing my views and analysis, but you always do your own research.
This video was created in collaboration with the IT company Anderson.
But before we start, a quick update on Iran. 3 weeks into the ceasefire, Hormuz is still effectively shut, but there are stories that some tankers managed to get through. Iran has proposed reopening the strait if the US lifts the naval blockade and shelves the nuclear questions for later. Trump has signaled he will not accept that. Talks are stuck on those 2 issues, with neither side willing to compromise. Oil is at $100, a rather elevated level. But the political math is bad. The latest polls have Trump's approval at second-term lows across the board. The Reuters poll has approval at 36%. CNBC has approval on the economy at 39%. The worst reading of either of his terms. Just 32% approve of his handling of inflation. Midterms are about 6 months out, and the slide is showing up specifically in Republicans' districts. Poly market has Senate control at roughly 50-50 right now. So the political pressure to end the war and let oil come down is rising. Although Washington seems stubborn on the negotiations with Iran, the clock is really ticking, and some sort of resolution should come soon. If there is a more volatility related to negotiations in the coming days or weeks, I think this is a chance to enter the market rather than not. In one of the previous episodes, I went into detail on Trump's political math, so take a look if you want more details. Okay, now the first story. The US economy is accelerating, and you can see directly in the first quarter earnings reported so far. With about 28% of S&P 500 in, blended earnings growth is running at 15% year over year. That number jumped from 13% the week before, as more companies reported and beat forecasts. This is the 6th straight quarter of double-digit S&P 500 earnings growth. The surprise data, when companies report above or below expectations, is sharper. 84% of companies are beating earnings estimates, against the 5-year average of 78%. The companies beating are doing it by 12% on average, against 5-year average of 7%. So companies are beating by nearly twice the normal magnitude this season. Revenue is even broader. Blended revenue growth is 10%, with 81% of companies beating, against a 5-year average of 70%. All 11 sectors of S&P 500 are positive on revenue this quarter. Now, where the main part of the growth is coming from? The earnings expansion this quarter is led by information technology, materials, industrials, and financials. These are the sectors we have been calling on this channel, excluding financials, the AI Capex story, the physical economy build-out, the chips, and the semis story. Now, while revenue grew across all 11 sectors, 2 are actually declining year over year on earnings: energy and healthcare. Paradoxically, that is the inversion of the consensus narratives. Headlines say oil at $100 should crush earnings through inflation. But reported Q1 numbers say energy is currently a drag because the spike happened late in the quarter and has not flowed through. Healthcare is the other underperformer. And then the physical economy data confirms this is real. US rail carloads have been running above 230,000 per week, with first quarter volumes up about 4% year over year. Chemical carloads in March hit an all-time weekly record at almost 36,000 carloads, up about 5.5% year over year. Q1 was the strongest first quarter on record. ATA truck tonnage in March posted its largest year-over-year gain in over 3 years, and Q1 was the strongest first quarter since 2017. The macro indicators line up the same way. ISM manufacturing PMI is at the highest reading in over 3 years, and all that is supported by growing bank credit in the economy that we talked about last week. A real boom. But most of this boom is clearly fueled by data centers build-out. Hyperscalers are spending $650 billion on AI this year, which alone is 2% of the US economy. The cyclical part of the economy is the main beneficiary here. One thing to keep in mind though, cyclical leadership like this often shows up late in the cycle. I'm not raising alarms yet, but stay mindful out there. Now, let's move to the United Arab Emirates and OPEC. This week, the UAE announced it is exiting OPEC and OPEC Plus, effective May 1st. After nearly 60 years of membership, the energy minister framed the timing as least disruptive to the rest of the producer group. But make no mistake, this is a major break. Now, why are they doing this? I think the main reason is economic stress that is getting very visible inside the UAE. The country has been the target of Iran missile and drone attacks at the beginning of the war. The Strait of Hormuz has been disrupted since the war started, and that has crippled the UAE's ability to export oil. Oil revenue is the foundation of the UAE's economy and the peg of the local currency to the dollar. When the strait closes, the damage is direct and immediate. So once Hormuz reopens, the UAE will need to pump as hard as it can to recover the lost revenue. They need flexibility, and OPEC quotas were constrained. They could no longer afford. Now the statistics, because this is where the real motivation shows up. UAE production capacity today is about 4.9 million barrels per day. Under OPEC quotas, they have been producing roughly 30% below that. Abu Dhabi's national oil company, after $150 billion Capex program, is on track to hit 5 million barrels per day by 2027, and has publicly said capacity could go to 6 million if the market needs it, which is about 6% of global oil supply. So the immediate unlock from leaving OPEC is about 1.5 million barrels per day, just from removing the quota. By 2027, when the Capex program is complete, that unlock grows to 1.7 million. And if the country pushes capacity to 6 million barrels per day as they have flagged, the full unlock relative to current production is closer to 2.5 million, almost double what they currently produce. Once Hormuz normalizes, that capacity comes online quickly. Now, the second piece. The same week the UAE was preparing this OPEC exit, they publicly asked the Fed for a dollar swap line. And it looks like the US administration is okay with that. Here's how a swap line actually works. A foreign central bank, in this case the UAE central bank, hands over its local currency, dirhams, to the Federal Reserve. In exchange, it receives US dollars. There's no fixed cap. The UAE central bank can effectively access an unlimited amount of dollars just by handing over its local currency in return. Historically, swap lines have been used as stress backstops for friends only, such as European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, and a handful of other major democracies. Every drawdown is published. Every recipient is on the record. That has changed. Treasury Secretary Bessent has confirmed that multiple Gulf allies and a number of Asian partners have already asked the US for swap lines, framed as routine, ongoing treasury conversations. The UAE is the most public test case, but the apparatus being put in place is broader. And the authority itself is now being treated as a White House decision, not a Fed independence question. The White House decides who gets what. Now, combine that with the fact that the UAE is not a democracy. The system is opaque. The drawdowns can be effectively invisible. That is an unusual combination. The Fed creates the dollars, the White House decides who gets them, the receiving country reports to no one. That is the structure of a shadow fiscal channel, whether it is labeled that or not. Anyway, let's put the two pieces together. Same week, production freedom from OPEC, direct dollar access from the Fed. Probably the White House will have a say in who can get the UAE oil. The country is unbundling from the Saudi-led Gulf and rebundling with the US dollar bloc. And OPEC, as an institution, is getting much weaker. If more countries decide to leave and Hormuz reopens, the risk becomes not the oil shortage, but an outright glut. Now, I want to discuss another major investment theme that I think is going to be interesting over the next quarters. We covered several AI bottlenecks here on this channel: chips, CPUs, energy, etc. Now, there is potentially a new one. I believe the next squeeze might be power semiconductors. A power semi is the chip that converts and switches voltage from the wall down to what a GPU can actually use. Today's NVIDIA rack draws 100 to 120 kilowatts. By 2028 to 2030, the roadmap is 600 kilowatts to a full megawatt per rack. To deliver that much power without the cables physically melting, the architecture has to switch. The voltage has to increase dramatically. Higher voltage means thinner wire, less heat, and less waste energy. NVIDIA actually formalized 800-volt DC as the architecture standard at the industry conference in October last year. The first big rack using it is called Kyber, I believe, launching the Rubin Ultra GPU in 2027. The chemistry that solves the 800-volt problem is silicon carbide. A silicon carbide power chip can switch much higher voltages without losing energy as heat, and it can cut server cooling costs actually by up to 40%. Now, the important distinction: standard silicon power chips are cheap legacy components that go into cars, household electronics, and low voltage gear. Silicon carbide is the next generation chemistry. They're different chips made from different materials. Now, two pieces of evidence this is happening in real time. Last week, NVIDIA visited Korean power equipment companies and asked them to design data center infrastructure around the 800-volt DC architecture. That is the architecture moving forward, not just an intention to develop it. And the second piece: standard silicon power chip prices are spiking. Chip makers are pulling capacity off legacy silicon lines to build the new AI-specific power stages, including silicon carbide. That leaves the rest of the silicon power chip market short. Same wafer cannibalization that hit memory in 2025, where the memory names run hard for a year on it. 5 companies make most of the silicon carbide chips going into this architecture: Infineon, the German market leader; ST Microelectronics, the Franco-Italian player co-developing power boards directly with NVIDIA; ON Semiconductor in the US, with the cleanest disclosed AI data center revenue; Wolfspeed in the US, currently the only company commercially shipping 10,000-volt switches, but it is a tricky case as the company has recently been restructured; and a company in Japan called ROM. What is interesting about this company is that although they have recently rallied on decent results, they are still at 2023 levels. They have been under the radar all this time, while the AI trade has been running across the value chain since 2025. So I think it does make sense to look at this sector and the companies I mentioned. To wrap up, the US economy is accelerating. Earnings, revenue, and trade all confirm it. The United Arab Emirates leaving OPEC just days after asking the US for a swap line is a real-time pivot in the Gulf. Production freedom plus direct dollar access. And the US gets a quota-free oil front. And on the AI Capex story, there is potentially a new bottleneck, power semis. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. If this was useful, subscribe and share, and I'll see you next week.